Hi, this is Tim Hill, PFFA President, for those of you who don't know me, and I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to try and update everyone as much as possible on what's going on with the pension system. Today is January 10th. It's a Monday. It's the first day of legislative session, during which no official action is really taken except for the governor's state of the state speech. What's going on currently is the Public Safety Personnel Retirement System, or PSPRS, Board of Trustees has recommended some changes to benefits as it applies to actives and retirees, as well as future hires. They do not have the ability to actually introduce legislation. It takes a member of the legislature to do that, but I believe that their bill will be introduced. And I want to go through a couple of the items briefly and what it looks like our response to those will be, and then some of the legal challenges and what we're working on. The board set a goal of returning the fund to being 80% funded within 20 years. Now, the important part of that is there's a direct correlation between what the employer contribution rate is and what the level of funding for the system is. Today our system is funded at 67.2%. One of the things that's important to know is there's nothing that the legislature or the Board of Trustees can do to immediately return the fund to an elevated funding level, because the system uses what's called a 7-year smoothing period, where every year of gains or every year of losses, only 1/7 of that is recognized in each year. And that's to keep the employer contribution rate from being like a yo-yo, way up and way down. For instance, 2 years ago, the system lost about 21%, and this year it made 13.75%. So it's difficult for governmental entities or anybody to budget under those circumstances. But again, they set the goal of 80% in 20 years. To get there, they had to recommend a number of changes. You have to remember that the board's duty is different from the duty of the legislature even, or of the union. Their duty under the Constitution and under federal statute as running a pension system is a fiduciary or financial responsibility to the fund and the members to make sure that the fund maintains good health. The way we got into this bad situation is that we had 2 once-in-a-lifetime market downturns in 1 decade. So that was a pretty significant hit to the system. Even though we're 67.2% funded, we can certainly continue to make payments. So there's no problem with anyone collecting their benefits today or tomorrow. So what the fund did is they recommended some changes. The most important change is to what we call the COLA. We don't really have a COLA. We have a pension escalator based on the earnings of the fund. And what happens is any year in which the fund earns over 9%, half of that excess goes to the excess earnings or COLA account. That's great for our retirees. Our retirees have had a 4% increase each and every year for 30 years straight, regardless of the rate of inflation. The bad part of that is when you have these big downturns, like in 2008 when the fund lost 21%, the main pension fund absorbs all of those losses. And then in a good year, they only get half of the upside, over 9%. So the most significant change that the Board of Trustees is recommending to the legislature is that in any year where the fund is funded at less than 70%, that there would be no new monies that flow into the pension escalator. In any year where the fund is funded between 70 and 80%, instead of half of the earnings over 9%, the escalator would only get 1/4 of the earnings. And then in any year where it's funded over 80%, would go back to the way that it is today. Sounds like a reasonable approach, and I believe it is. The difficulty and the downside for current and future retirees is, again, based on the plan and the actuaries, the fund does not predict that we'll be 80% funded until 20 years from now, and 70% funded between 8 to 10 years from now. None of this is happy news, none of this is good news, but we have to secure the underlying health of the fund. So I in no way blame them or criticize them for taking that approach, because that is the biggest single item that's hurting our pension system. We are developing a counter proposal, which I don't want to go into the details right now, but I think is good for the fund and secures a more reasonable expectation that our retirees will continue to get increases. Their next recommendation is your final calculation for your pension is based on your last best 3 years. They want to return that to what it was prior to 1983 to say it's based on your 5 final years, and that is to avoid something called pension spiking, where folks work a ton of overtime at the end of their career and receive a higher pension for which not enough contributions were made on. We're going to work with them. I do not believe legally under the Constitution and the contract clause that can be done, and it makes a very, very, very small difference in the health of the fund. So that is one issue in their plan that we will probably oppose. The next issue is to raise the employee contribution rate. Currently, we pay 7.65% of salary, and that is set in statute. The board's proposal is to increase that to a total of 11.65% by increasing the employee contribution rate by 1% a year over 4 years. Again, we are looking and we're digesting the numbers and the actuaries to see what can be done to alleviate the pain there. Probably the item that's getting the most attention from our members, our current active members, is the drop. Today, in the drop, once you enter the drop, you make no employee contributions and your employer makes no employer contributions to the pension system. You also earn a rate of interest that is currently 8.25%, which is the assumed earnings rate for the fund. The board proposal would change that. First, it would say that the employees need to continue to make employee contributions during the period of the drop. The second piece would change the interest rate earning to be reflective of the actual rate of return of the fund in that year for each and every year that you're in the drop, with a minimum of 2% so you don't incur losses, and a maximum of 8%. Still a pretty good deal for the members. Again, we're still running our numbers to see how much that actually helps the fund and the impact on our members as well. Finally, there's an additional option that the board has put out to the legislature for future hires. And what that option would be is all of the things that I just talked about, plus to say that a normal retirement age would be at 52.5 years old with 25 years of service. That calculation would still be 62.5% at 25 years. That would not be a change. So that is the initial proposal from the Board of Trustees. I can tell you right now that most of the statewide police organizations, there's 4 of them, are opposed to this proposal. They're quite angry at the firefighters for even indicating that we may be supportive of the PRS proposal, because their plan is not to have any change for retirees or actives, but to put all change on future hires. The problem with that is you will see no improvement in the funding of the pension system for over 20 years. It'll drive employer rates to be as high as 50% of payroll. And that will be a burden on the actives, because there will be no money from the employers for improvements to either wages or health insurance or other benefits. We'll continue to keep you posted. It's a very complex subject, and there are a number of stakeholders, including employees, employers, politicians, and of course a lot of this is being driven by the media. We're going forward with our plan, and we'll discuss that in the next update. Thank you.